please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, as promised, in earnings to watch out for today, Telecom major Bharti Airtel reports its Q4 numbers. Rima, what are we expecting there?
Well, you could see a loss this time for Bharti Airtel, and this will be the first in many, many years for the company. And the stock seems to be reflecting that. It's down 25% on a YTD basis since the peak level of 565 that the stock hit in November. It's already fallen close to about 30%. So numbers not great. Revenues down on a consolidated basis, which includes their India Wireless, Africa, the India D2H business, etc. So revenues down nearly 3%. Margins could come down from 37% down to 35%, and there could be a loss. Now, the range on the profitability or on the bottom line varies. So Kotak is expecting a loss of close to 375 crore, while Ambit says there is a possibility for mild profit. But on the whole, for the India Wireless business, you should expect a weak quarter. In fact, for Bharti Airtel, the India Wireless revenues have been declining for 7 straight quarters now. Q4, this quarter, will be weak for the industry on account of one, Jio had cut tariffs in January, and most of the telcos, including Bharti, had followed suit and cut and lowered their tariffs. Secondly, the international termination rate was lowered. And thirdly, incumbent players as well as Jio have been coming out with lower and lower value packs, more bundled offerings, as a result of which the average revenue per user has been consistently falling. So for the India Wireless business, on the back of these factors, we're expecting the revenues to fall by about 6%, with the margins coming down by 250 basis points. The average revenue per user has been consistently falling. It used to be close to about 190 to 195 when Jio was launched, and now it's expected to come in close to 115. Subscriber numbers will continue to be strong, as well as the data business, but it will be overshadowed by the weakness in the India Wireless. Africa has been growing well, but Q4 is seasonally weak. The street will also watch the D2H segment, and if Jio does a commercial launch, is that going to follow the wireless way, will also be closely tracked.
Okay, all right, Rima. Thanks very much for that. Well, we do have Oberoi Realty, which will be on our radar as well ahead of its Q4 numbers today. Sonal is here to tell us what we can expect. Sonal?
Hi, Ika, good morning. Well, this is one stock that always delivers the results which are better than the expectations, and I expect that is what will happen this time as well, because the stock was already excited up 17% in yesterday's trading session. In terms of revenue, we're expecting a revenue growth of around 22.5%. EBITDA is expected to go up by around 24%, and margins are expected to expand by 60 basis points. All this leading to a profit increase of around 12%. But in key things to watch, basically in terms of volumes, we're expecting them to decline 2% year on year, basically because of lower traction in their Mulund properties. In terms of occupancy in the annuity portfolio, that is expected to do better, and the traction is expected to increase. 55% is the occupancy that we're expecting versus 30% last year. Key monitorable will be update on the Thane land that they bought last year from GSK. What are their plans relating to that? The management commentary will be keenly watched regarding that. But we are not expecting any new projects to hit the revenue recognition criteria, and that's why all the sales will be from the already launched projects. In terms of debt levels, this is one company which has basically virtually debt-free. But this time around, we are expecting debt to go higher because of working capital requirements. But we'll have to really see how the stock reacts before the results really come out. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Sonal. Thanks so much for that. As Sonal said, the stock ended virtually at the high point of the day yesterday. There was big volumes and a sharp spike in the final hour. But staying with earnings then, from the financial space, LIC Housing Finance and Bharat Financial, they reported their set of numbers. Abhishek's here to run us through the earnings fine print. Hi Abhishek, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. For LIC, the quarter has been muted. Why? Because they are seeing pressure on their yields or their pricing of the portfolios. Despite the fact that the disbursement was very strong, the AUM growth was the lowest in last 6 quarters. So disbursement picked up, mainly because they had about 2,250 odd crore disbursed to non-housing portfolio. Now, this run rate actually has been around 900 to 1,200 crore. So this is a one-off phenomenon. Despite the fact that that, disbursement picked up in the non-housing portfolio, the yield overall, even on the housing and non-housing, has been on a declining trend. And the gap between pure vanilla housing loans and the non-housing loans, which actually should be 200 basis point plus, is now reduced to 140 basis points. Now, why I'm stressing on yields is that market competition is there for LIC housing finance, and in a declining interest rate scenario for them in terms of their yields, while the cost of funds are rising, how far they can maintain their NIMs going ahead will be seen very closely. So NIM improved to 2.49 versus 2.33 on a sequential basis. Asset quality also improved as gross NPA touched 0.78 versus 0.87. Largely the NII and PAT were in line with our poll. Coming on to Bharat Financial, it is the strongest ever quarter for the company. Why? Because the customer acquisition has been pretty strong. In Q3, as we had mentioned in our preview links yesterday, that customer acquisition was at 11.85 lakh customers. Now you look at the Q3 numbers, over there they added 8.5 lakh. How they were able to add customer is that while others were busy with the small finance operation or taking care of the balance sheet, these guys have been penetrating really well and acquiring customers. So about 5,740 odd crore is the highest ever quarterly disbursement, and that saw the AUM growth being at 5-quarter high at around 38% levels. You look at the return ratios, ROA at 5.8. I have not seen that kind of an ROA for a long time in Bharat Financial. So overall, very strong set of numbers. They have, missed on the guidance, but guided that FY19 will be very strong for them. Back to you.
Let's get talking about the commodity space. In fact, an informal ministerial panel yesterday explored options such as production-linked subsidy, imposition of a sugar cess, and reducing GST on ethanol to help mills in clearing dues to sugarcane farmers. Manisha Gupta joins in to tell us more about the sugar space as well as what she's watching in the international commodity market. Manisha, hi, morning. First, let's start with sugar.
Oh, well, absolutely. And there's so much happening in that space. Remember, this has been a stressed sector, and the government has done plenty, like scrapping export duty, putting 100% import duty, ensuring or making mandatory that 2 million tons of sugar is exported. But that clearly hasn't helped the sugar prices, because we've seen them continue to trade below cost of production. So, and the cane arrears have been piling up as well, 18,000 crores as we understand now. And the industry estimate shows that it would pile up to 20,000 crores by the end of April. And that is what has led to the constitution of the group of ministers, which had its first meeting yesterday, and they are expected to have one more meeting before it goes for a cabinet approval there. So as you said, yes, there was 3 or 4 things on the agenda. One, of course, was the GST on ethanol, and of course, with the crude oil prices rising, the profit or the margins that the companies are making on ethanol should be passed on to the consumers. Apart from that, it also has to do with the production subsidy rather, and of course, industry has been asking for 75 rupees per quintal, but it really is not clear on how much would we really get. It anywhere is between 50 to 75 that the government might agree on. The other thing, of course, important is about sugar cess. You also have seen government talk about creating a buffer stock in case of sugar, because we are looking at a record 31 million tons of sugar production this time around in the country, and the consumption just about stands at 25 million tons. So there is plenty that the government perhaps will have to do onto this one. Well, that's about sugar, but on the other space, you have to keep an eye on the metal space, because that has gone in for a heavy profit-taking overnight. We have seen aluminum and nickel prices decline between 5 to 8%, and Shanghai has opened on a weaker note. This comes in after a statement from US that the companies will have until October to wind up their, contacts or businesses with Rusal. So that gives them an open window, and that has led to a heavy profit-taking in metals as we see it.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that. Well, going easy on Rusal seems to be what's playing out. Remember, the Rusal stock, we don't really have it to pull it up, but it corrected more than 50%. In today's trading session, I'm looking at it on the Hong Kong exchange. It's up nearly around 30% as we speak. But shifting focus then to the futures and option space, Manglam is with us. Morning, Manglam. We were looking at the premiums on the Nifty yesterday towards the end of the day. Well, they almost disappeared. Tell us your reading of the futures and options space.
Absolutely, it was all but eroded the premium on the Nifty futures, the April premium that we're talking about. But incremental positive as well as some protection buying is what I read from the index futures and options space. Primarily because on the index level, the FIs, they bought about 180 odd crores, and while the long exposure is at 40%, remember the April to May rollovers are still 18%. So that is one data point I'll be watching out for, because despite the increasing longs, there are still more shorts in the system. And if the rollovers are lower than usual, then one can reasonably assume that the shorts chose not to roll their positions over. So that is something we'll keep an eye out on. As far as the index options is concerned, there was some protection sought because 14,000 long puts added. That compares to about 2,000 short puts added on the index options. As well as in index calls, the FIIs unwound about 600 long calls and added the same amount, closer to 6,000 short calls in index options. So that is something I'll watch out for. 2 days ahead of expiry, the markers are placed at the 10,700 call as well as the 10,500 put. Yesterday, the 10,550 put was fairly active. 7 lakh shares added out there for a premium of close to around 30 rupees, maybe indicating that 10,500 is a mark that everyone will be closely watching out for. 10,600 put too, so about 7 lakh shares being added for about 50 rupees. 10,550 could be the first pole for support. Keep an eye out on Reliance Communications. That one comes out of F&O ban and coupled with some sort of news-based reports with regards to their debt restructuring as well. So we'll watch out for that.
Okay, all right, Mangalam, thanks very much for that. Well, let's get in our bullseye contestants and see what they are recommending to you for today. And with that, it's also a wrap on Power Breakfast. Stay tuned for Bazaar Morning Call.
My first call is buy on Sterlite Technologies. Maintain a stop loss of 345 for an upside target of 370. My second call is buy on Ramco Systems. Maintain a stop loss of 485 for an upside target of 525. My third call is buy on Dalmia Bharat. Maintain a stop of 2950 for an upside target of 3120. And my fourth pick is buy on Ipca Laboratories. Maintain a stop of 708 for an upside target of 750.
First stock for today on the buy side is going to be L&T Infotech. Long positions can be created in this stock, keeping a stop loss of 1490 and expecting a target of 1655. Next stock on the buy side is going to be Cholamandalam Finance, and long positions can be created in Cholamandalam, keeping a stop loss of 1619 on the downside and expecting a target of 1798 on the upside. Next stock on the buy side is going to be Bharat Financial Inclusion, and stop loss for Bharat Finance has to be kept at 1126, expecting a target of 1250. And the final stock on the buy side is going to be Action Construction, and stop loss for Action Construction, which is also known as ACE, has to be kept at 187.90 and expecting a target of 208.
My first call is a buy call on Carborundum Universal. Buy Carborundum Universal, stop loss 354.80, target 390. My second call is a buy call on 8K Miles Software Services. Buy 8K Miles Software Services, stop loss 725, target 830. My third call is a buy call on Samaria Consumer. Buy Samaria Consumer, stop loss 18.90, target 30. My last call is a buy call on Shriram Transport Finance. Buy Shriram Transport Finance, stop loss 1544, target 1690.